Mayor's Update for April 2015. I'm Megan Pembroke, Communications Director for the City of Everett. And each month we take some time to sit down with Mayor Ray Stephanson and talk about issues and projects that are important to you. Welcome, Mayor.
It's nice to be here, and it's nice to have spring finally here and longer days. Don't have to run in the dark anymore in the morning, so it's good.
Yeah, it's starting to look nice.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Well, the other thing that's here is nearing the end of the legislative session, the 2015 legislative session, and I know that there's a number of issues the city's been tracking pretty closely this year. Can you give us an update on what's been happening in Olympia and what are some of the major issues we've been tracking?
Higher education, transportation, obviously very concerned about any changes in the incentive around aerospace, tax incentive. So we can talk about each of those. You're right, the legislature is supposed to be done this month, but you know, when it's a non-election year and there's a lot of business in Olympia, oftentimes you'll see the session go longer. So I'm thinking it may even go to June this year. So the first thing the legislature did in the Senate was deal with the transportation issues. They've passed that out of the Senate, out of the Transportation Committee. It's now in the House. We had asked for $1 billion. I know we talked about this before. Right now, the Senate version is about $570 million. Most of the projects that are just Everett are included in that $570 million. But you know, as we've done in the past, we know we're part of the county, and we know that county residents work in Everett. So we've really trying to take a holistic approach to transportation. So, you know, I'd like to see some revenue for 531. That's a Smoky Point Road east off of I-5 that goes up towards Highway 9. A lot of traffic, two-lane road. I mean, it just does not work. We've continued to be supportive of US 2, for example, and there's a little bit in there for US 2, but not enough to advance the eventual westbound replacement of the trestle, which we need to be focused on and moving towards. So it's not over. So, you know, the legislature's dealing with that. They've got to deal with McCleary and the mandate and the threat of from the state Supreme Court about funding higher education. I think that's going to take a lot of time. And what I worry about a little bit, we have a $61 million ask for higher education, for a capital ask for a building. And this really advances and expands WSU, Washington State University, and University Center, Everett. I do feel confident, though, that we've got a lot of support for that. Another $4.5 million for 4 additional degree offerings, including an agricultural offering that really will help our farming communities and help Skagit County. So I think we're positioned pretty well. You know, it's never over until it's over, but I think the real worry for those of us who try to look at education from a broad perspective of, you know, from kindergarten through undergraduate and graduate degrees, I just worry sometimes that we're going to sacrifice higher education to meet a state mandate, and we've got to figure out a way to do both. And as we know in Everett, that unfortunately sometimes means that you've got to make the tough decision to support additional revenue. And I think that's what this legislature is going to have to do.
And I know we've also talked about local revenue and that being in need, and there were a number of bills dealing with that this year. How's the outlook looking on those? What does that mean for the city?
You've got a legislature that is trying to balance its budget, is trying to identify as much revenue as possible, and every source of revenue, particularly shared revenue to local governments, to cities and to counties, and the Public Works Trust Fund. All of those, and that fund is really a fund that we borrow against with low interest to do large water and sewer and stormwater projects, and we've got many of those. They're all under attack, and I understand that. I mean, you've got a governmental body that's trying to balance its budget and trying to find every bit of revenue it can, and it's got state mandates. But, as I've often said before, we're sort of at the bottom of the food chain. So we have nowhere else to go. So if the state decides to sweep state shared revenue that we currently use to provide services, we have one or two choices. We're going to either have to, well, maybe three. We have to cut service, we have to get more efficient, and we've gotten much more efficient in just so many areas in the city, or you have to find more revenue. There's just no other way. So, it's never over till it's over, and we spent a lot of time, and I've spent a lot of time personally in Olympia, and we have people that are supporting us, Doug Levy, Pat McLean, and others that are sort of watching it every day for us. But it is always a challenge, and you just have to be very attentive and very much sort of front and center. But it's just the way it is.
Well, thanks for that update, and I'm sure we'll still be talking about this in the next couple of months.
Yeah, hopefully one more month, but probably longer.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about Naval Station Everett and our parks classes. Welcome back to the Mayor's Update. Well, Mayor, I wanted to take a second and talk a little bit about Naval Station Everett. It's not something we always talk about, but they're a really important part of our community. Could you tell our viewers a little bit about what they mean to Everett and the region as a whole?
So they are our second largest employer in Everett. About 6,500 employees, both military and civilian. They bring about $500 million to our local economy a year, so it's a big deal. And when I'm down there on the waterfront running in the morning, I see all those cars, and I think of all of our car dealers that are realizing benefit of Naval Station Everett, and we think about the housing they have and the grocery stores and the services. So, they are an important economic part of our local economy. There's always sort of this dynamic in this country relative to the military, and clearly there's a lot of threat in the world. We look to the Far East and the Asian countries, and we know they're building their military. We continue to have struggles in the Middle East, and terrorist problems, and but yet there seems to be currently sort of this mindset that the military is got to get smaller, it's spending too much. And while I understand the balance that every congressman and probably every president has to deal with when it comes to federal spending, maintaining Naval Station Everett, in my view, clearly has strategic value for the Navy worldwide. It's a deep water port. It's a day faster steaming to Asia than California and San Diego, which is a huge Navy base. So it is very, very important. We are always mindful of that. We have a very close working relationship with local Navy, but we do, on an annual basis, go to Washington, D.C. to talk with our congressional delegation, and we also go to the Pentagon to talk with Navy officials to make sure that we're not forgotten, that we are getting our share as a base of investment, that the strategic value of Naval Station Everett is known, and we keep collectively working to make it better and more important. Because the risk, Megan, frankly, is, this country goes through base realignment closure processes. The last one we went through was in 2005, and I was mayor, and it was sort of touch and go for Everett. I mean, it was very, very painful. And fortunately, we haven't been through another one, but they're always looming out there.
And I know you just had the chance to make one of those trips back to the Pentagon and
Mm-hmm.
talk with senior leadership, and that's really important. What do you see kind of as the future of the base? I know we'll have some changes in the ships that are out there, and I know there's some other things you've been working on with Economic Alliance.
The frigates are a smaller Navy ship, about 300 sailors. They've really, served this country very well, and from, drug traffic intervention in South America to military exercises in the East, and Far East, and in Asia, in the Middle East. Been a tremendous workhorse for the Navy for a lot of years, but they're sort of at the end of their useful life. The Navy has really focused on replacing those with a larger ship, a destroyer. So we're seeing 3 frigates that are have been or will be decommissioned in Everett to be replaced by 3 destroyers. And that 3-to-3 ship change out will net us another 300 more sailors at Naval Station Everett. That's a good thing. And it's a newer technology that should be here for years and decades. So that's a good thing. You've got Nimitz in a big maintenance workup right now in Bremerton. Comes back to Everett in 2016. Will be here for a while, but then these Navy ships are designed and planned to be at sea and in crisis places in the world, so it will leave and then be back probably in 2018. Current schedule, and again this could change, is that the Nimitz will end its useful life by about 2022. So that's the big question mark, is what will that future be? Will there be another carrier battle group here? I hope so. But we could see a change in the makeup of the ships that are at Naval Station Everett. One of the things that we've been working awfully hard on is this whole notion and plan to bring a shipyard, maritime shipyard to Everett on the old Kimberly-Clark site. And I can tell you the Navy is very excited about that prospect, but we've also been courting a bigger Coast Guard presence. Coast Guard is scheduled to build more ships, more icebreakers. My vision for for Naval Station Everett is to see a much bigger and more robust military presence that's really a mix of Navy and a bigger Coast Guard presence. And again, if we have the ability to have a Foss Maritime, for example, situated on the old Kimberly-Clark site, being able to do ship repairs and ship building, that's an awfully important thing for the military, because you're not disrupting family life by having sailors have to go to Seattle or to Bremerton when there's a maintenance workup. It's more cost effective. It just makes a whole lot of sense. So it's something that we're working on all the time, and oftentimes it's sort of below the radar screen, and fortunately we're not in crisis, but we frankly don't want to be. That's why we pay attention and take trips and make sure that we're not forgotten and people understand the value of Naval Station Everett.
Well, thanks for that update.
Yeah.
Well, I want to close by shifting gears. We've talked about it being spring and nicer out, and that's a great time to get out and enjoy some of our parks. We have a ton of parks throughout the city, neighborhood parks, big parks, unique parks like Jetty Island. For somebody who's newer to the community or maybe looking for a new park to explore, do you have any favorites or any that you would suggest?
Well, with the new website that you've been a big part of designing, there's, my recommendation would be for anyone who's interested is to check the website out. There's just so much information there, but you can find almost anything to do here. I'm a big salmon fisherman, and you don't have to own a boat. You can go on charter boats, and they're available, or if you're real nice to me, I might take you. So, we've got the music series in the summer. We've got Sorticulture, which is a great and fun event. 4th of July is always terrific. And you don't have to be a world-class athlete. I mean, you can walk almost any place in the city. If you want to come out on a YMCA 4th of July fun run, you can walk or run or whatever you want to do. Bicycling is huge. Jetty Island, the windsurfers this is sort of a mecca for them. I think they want to keep it a secret, the ones that use it, so there's not a lot of use, but you can really find almost anything to do. So there are a few things you can learn, like through our Parks Department, you can take classes in boating and sailing. One of the things that I am intrigued about, which is probably a little more passive, I would really like to learn how to be a better cook. There's certain things I do okay with, but that's something that I want to do more of. So if you go out and get in a cooking class, I might be there with you. So.
Well, we have some really unique offerings. I mean, they've added paddleboard yoga.
Oh, yeah.
They've got some good adult sports leagues. And I know you've talked about really our Parks Department being a point of pride. Why is that so important to have such a creative team that's always working hard to come up with new offerings?
It's always bothered me because my family's always been a big user of the state park system. You can't go into a state park today without paying a fee to even drive through it. And all through the year we would take a drive on a weekend, and we'd go down and walk on the beach in the middle of March. And the thought of paying a fee and going through that rigmarole is just has always left a bad taste in my mouth. And that's why I've really tried to ensure that we have a very robust and creative park system, that you're going to pay a fee for a class or learn how to kayak or whatever, but it's a modest fee. But there's an awful lot of stuff you can do that's free. You can use the parks and not have to pay a fee to go into them. We have the spray pool at Forest Park. I mean, there's just a whole lot of things to do, and that's what I think, that's the kind of quality of life stuff that I think is important to people who live here. And that's what I want to protect and maintain. And I can tell you, having gone through that budget process last year, and you remember, I mean, when we started talking about the possibility of some of those services going away, people were fiercely protective and said, no way. We're willing to pay a little more if it means keeping those quality of life services here. And we have, an emerging music scene for people of all ages. You can learn how to dance, although I've retired dancing. And our music scene and our art scene is just lots of fun. You can find a whole weekend of stuff to do really most any time. You want to learn how to snowshoe, you can do that, or cross-country skiing. All those classes are available through our park system.
There's a lot to look forward to, and it's a great time of year to do it.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for giving us these updates, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next month.